We have two incredible stories about how everything began. One story tells us the universe was literally spoken into existence, that it all started with a word. The other says the universe exploded out of nothing in a massive Big Bang. Now, these sound like they're from completely different worlds, right? But what if I told you they might actually be telling the same story, just in two very different languages? Let's dig in.
I mean, it's the biggest question there is, isn't it? Before any of us, before our cities, our planet, even our sun, how did all this get here? For thousands of years, this single question has been the engine behind humanity's greatest adventures, in both science and in faith.
And all of that searching has basically given us two epic answers. The first one, from ancient texts, says that reality itself was spoken into being, that it all started with a divine word. And the second, from the world of modern physics, says that all of reality erupted from a single, infinitely dense point, that it all started with a Big Bang.
At first glance, you just can't square them. A word, a bang. They seem totally at odds. But the whole point of this explainer is to show you the mind-blowing parallels you find when you look just a little bit closer. What if these aren't rival accounts at all, but more like two different windows looking out onto the exact same profound reality?
Okay, so let's start with the ancient idea. We're going to trace the journey of this concept, this idea of a creative word. And to do that, we have to follow the clues through Greek philosophy and Hebrew thought, which all lead to this powerful concept called the logos. So this idea of the logos didn't just pop up overnight. It grew and evolved over centuries. You had the ancient Greeks, guys like Heraclitus, who looked at a chaotic world and said, there has to be some kind of rational, organizing principle underneath it all. They called it the logos. Then the Stoics came along and said, yeah, and that principle is a divine mind that's woven into the very fabric of the universe. At the same time, you had the Hebrew tradition talking about God's creative word, the Devar, and a personified wisdom, or Sophia, who was there at the dawn of creation. And then, a brilliant philosopher named Philo of Alexandria basically took all these ideas, put them in a blender, and came up with the Logos as a kind of mediator, the perfect bridge between a transcendent God and our physical world. And this is where the Gospel of John comes in and does something completely radical. It takes this rich, complex idea of the Logos, this cosmic blueprint, this divine reason, and says, hey, you know that thing? It's not just an idea, it's an agent. It's the active, creative force through which everything from the biggest galaxies to the smallest atoms was made. Okay, let's hit pause on that and jump forward about 2,000 years. We're moving from philosophy to physics to unpack the other side of our story, the scientific account of where we came from.
And here's where we hit our first kinda shocking connection. The guy who first came up with the idea that became the Big Bang Theory, he wasn't some atheist scientist trying to kill religion. He was Georges Lemaitre, a brilliant Belgian physicist who also happened to be a Catholic priest. So right from its birth, this iconic scientific theory came from a mind that saw no conflict between faith and reason.
You know, Lemaitre had this just beautiful, poetic way of describing his idea. He called the beginning of the universe a day without yesterday. Think about that. It wasn't an explosion in space. It was the explosion of space and time itself. So asking what happened before the Big Bang is like asking what's north of the North Pole. The concept of before literally didn't exist yet. Now, science has since mapped out this story with incredible detail. It all kicks off at time zero with something called a singularity, a point so dense, so hot that our laws of physics just break. Then, in an instant, the universe goes through inflation, expanding faster than light from smaller than an atom to about the size of a grapefruit. Just a few minutes later, the first building blocks of matter start to form. But here's the crucial part. Pay attention to this. For the first 380,000 years, the universe was completely dark. The lights weren't on yet.
And it's right here, in this moment of the very first light, that our two stories, the Word and the Bang, smash into each other in the most unbelievable way. Seriously, this is where it gets really cool. Okay, you have to look at the original Hebrew in the book of Genesis. On day one, when God says, let there be light, the word is or. This means light itself, this primordial, raw, formless energy. But it's not until day 4 that God creates the ma'or, which means the light bearers or light holders, things like the sun and the stars. For centuries, this just seemed weird, right? The ancient text was clearly saying that light existed before the things that make light. How is that possible? Well, guess what the Big Bang model tells us? For the first 380,000 years, The universe was a super hot, dense soup of plasma. The particles of light, photons, were there, but they were trapped, bouncing around inside a cosmic fog. They couldn't go anywhere. But then, as the universe expanded and cooled, something amazing happened. Electrons finally hooked up with atomic nuclei. This is called recombination. And in that moment, the fog cleared. The light was finally set free to travel across the cosmos.
And the craziest part is, we have a photograph of it. This image is the cosmic microwave background. It's literally the afterglow of that first light breaking free, the oldest light in the entire universe, stretched out by 13.8 billion years of expansion. It's a fossil of the exact moment the universe lit up. It's the physical evidence of ore, light itself, filling the cosmos long before the first Mauer, the first star, ever flickered into existence.
When you understand the science, that poetic line from the Gospel of John just hits differently, doesn't it? The image of a primordial light bursting through the darkness, a light that has been traveling through space unconquered ever since that first moment.
But that first light isn't the only echo we find. Let's move on, because there's another incredible point where these two stories seem to rhyme, the almost unbelievable precision of the laws of physics that make our universe possible.
So, it turns out, our existence is balanced on a razor's edge. Physicists have discovered that if you tweaked the fundamental forces of nature by even the tiniest amount, we wouldn't be here. If the strong nuclear force was just a fraction weaker, atoms would never form. A little bit stronger, and you'd only have hydrogen. Change gravity just a bit, and you either get no stars at all, or stars that burn out way too fast for life to ever get started. The universe seems to be exquisitely, you might even say finely tuned for life.
So, what do you do with that information? Well, physicists often talk about the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. They're basically scratching their heads, wondering why the universe follows such elegant, understandable rules. It's like it's built on a foundation of pure information and logic. Theologians, on the other hand, look at the very same data and see a clue, a hint of an intelligent organizing principle that designed the cosmos with this rational structure, a mind behind it all, which, if you think about it, sounds an awful lot like the Logos.
Okay, so this brings us to the big finish. How do we hold these two epic stories together? Are they doomed to be in conflict, or is there a way to find a single, unified vision that has room for both?
I love this metaphor from a physicist and theologian named John Polkinghorne. He called it binocular vision. Just think about how your eyes work. Each eye sees a flat, slightly different image of the world, but when your brain combines them, bam, you get depth perception. You see in 3D. Polkinghorne argued that science and theology are like our two eyes. Science tells us how things work, the nuts and bolts. Theology explores why they work, the meaning and purpose. You really need both to see reality in all its beautiful three-dimensional depth.
Now, of course, we have to acknowledge this isn't a perfect fit for everyone. There is real conflict. Some religious interpretations, like young Earth creationism, see a direct contradiction between the scientific timeline and a literal reading of Genesis. And on the other side, some materialist scientists propose things like the multiverse, the idea that there are infinite universes. So it was just a matter of chance that one of them, ours, ended up with the right settings for life. These are real, important counterarguments that keep the conversation alive.
So, at the end of the day, we're left with this question. After seeing all of these amazing echoes between a Big Bang and a divine word, between ancient scripture and modern cosmology, what do you think the universe is? A magnificent but ultimately random accident? An elegant mathematical equation that somehow just wrote itself into existence? Or could it be something more? A divine sentence, a creative word that is still being spoken across the vastness of space and time?